Yesterday was the NFL trade deadline, so the Pittsburgh Steelers can no longer make trades to acquire veteran talent for the rest of the 2025 NFL season, but they can still scour the free agency market. So today on Steelers Talk, we'll be breaking down my list of the top post-trade deadline free agency targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers to consider signing now that the deadline has passed. Now, before we get into the content today, if someone signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're going to have a breaking news video for you guys right here on the channel for free. So if you guys want a breakdown of that player, when and if the con artist strikes in free agency now, from between now and to the end of the season, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. With that, let's get into today's video, starting with the 5 positions that we're going to be talking about today that have certainly been thrown out there as potential target areas for the Pittsburgh Steelers to upgrade as the season goes on. Certainly wide receiver is a hot button position of target. Then also cornerback and safety. Could the Steelers defense use some help in the secondary after kind of a slow start to the year? Defensive tackle is certainly one that's been thrown out there as well. And then offensive line, especially with the injury to Isaac Seumalo, some people have suggested the Steelers should get more depth along the offensive line. So we'll start here with the wide receiver position, because obviously this is the one that has been the most talked about for many seasons at this point. And personally, I think Pittsburgh is going to stick with their current set of wide receivers that they have in their room right now, at least for the time being. You know, obviously injuries can happen, circumstances can change, but I think right now they do feel pretty darn good about where they're at with their wide receiver room. You've got your number 1 receiver in DK Metcalf. This team, I've been trying to tell you guys, really does believe in Calvin Austin III as a number 2 receiver inside this offense. That likes to distribute the football, all these different things. Calvin can be a threat to all 3 levels of the field. He's a yak threat. He's a vertical threat. He's a good route runner. He is undersized, so he can get pushed around a little bit, and he's not much of a run blocker. But they like what he brings to the Steelers offense for sure. And then Roman Wilson has shown some good things. Aaron Rodgers has been very complimentary of him over the last several weeks. He's put together some pretty darn good film over the last month, so it seems like he's earned the right to remain this team's number 3 receiver. And they've added Marquez Valdes-Scantling to the practice squad, and I expect he'll be added to the active roster. Maybe not this week, but certainly in the weeks to come. They've used Ben Skoranek in certain packages as like a true early down kind of run blocking type of wide receiver. He has a touchdown this year as well. And you have to remember, guys, that this Steelers offense really does lean into just pass catchers in general, not just wide receivers, right? They use multiple tight ends. This team leads the league by a wide margin in 12 and 13 personnel. And they use Jonnu Smith pretty much as a bigger wide receiver in the slot. They use Pat Freiermuth as a receiver in the slot quite a bit as well. And then that's not even counting Darnell Washington, who has been getting a lot of targets as well. So I do think that the Steelers, you know, they weren't desperate to trade for a wide receiver. I think they wanted Jacoby Myers for the right price tag, but that right price tag never surfaced, and the Jacksonville Jaguars ended up outbidding them. But if there's an injury or if they still want to add another receiver, there are some names out there that they can consider. The first one on my list is Diontae Johnson. Now, maybe that bridge is completely burnt. Maybe they just don't want him back in their locker room, and I can't necessarily blame them for that. But if they are looking for that route runner that can separate versus man coverage, I think Calvin is that guy for this offense right now. But Diontae is certainly still in that kind of mold of a true route runner that can create some separation. I wouldn't say it's impossible they bring back Diontae Johnson, but I will say it's probably unlikely. Odell Beckham Jr. is another guy that they can consider. He's currently serving a suspension, so they'd have to wait a couple more weeks to even consider adding him to the active roster. But he's good friends with Aaron Rodgers. He said during the offseason he's had conversations with the Steelers about signing here. So if the Steelers still feel like they need wide receiver help by the time that he is eligible to play, OBJ is a name to keep your eye on. Robert Woods, of course, he already knows the playbook. He has some experience playing with Rodgers, obviously, inside this offense. So if you're looking for somebody that's more plug and play, Robert Woods is somebody you can consider. Nelson Agholor knows what it's like to play in the AFC North as a wide receiver 4. He can bring some stuff there as wide receiver depth. And then the Pittsburgh native Tyler Boyd is another name there, where if you're looking for somebody that's a bigger kind of slot receiver, that can, be a possession type of guy. I know that he says that he wants to play for the Steelers before he retires, and he's already said that he would love to play for Mike Tomlin and the Steelers this season. So maybe that's something that the Steelers could potentially look at. And then some honorable mentions here. DJ Chark is a bigger kind of X receiver that they might bring in if like DK Metcalf gets injured or something like that. Zach Pascal is a guy that's a pretty good run blocker, very physical run blocking type of guy, but Not necessarily like a super big game-changing type of receiving talent. Then KJ Hamler had some moments with the Buffalo Bills in preseason this year that were encouraging. Mecole Hardman, former teammate of MVS, another fast guy if they want to add another guy with speed. And KJ Osborn has been a starter in the past for the Minnesota Vikings. He's traveled around the league with the Washington Commanders and other places, and he's currently available as well. But personally, guys, like I said, I think the Steelers, because they're such a tight end heavy offense, I think that they feel pretty good with where they're at wide receiver right now, and they would have liked to added another kind of piece to this group and another type of receiver like a Jacoby Myers, but the price tag just wasn't worth it for a one-year rental for them, and they end up standing pat. And right at the end of the day, this offense is in the top half of EPA per play and in the top half of scoring offense. They're top 2 in the league. Internal and giveaways, so they don't turn the football over. They're pretty darn efficient. They are scoring points at an above league average level. So at the end of the day, I'm actually okay if the Steelers stand pat at wide receiver at this point. So true or false? Let me know down there in the comments section. The Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver room is good enough as is right now. Type T if you think that statement is true, or type F if you think that statement is false. Don't forget to let me know your reasonings down there in the comments section as well. And this will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. While I tell you about our sponsor, type T for true or F for false. Now let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And the hard-hitting football action this season is even better with our friends at Prize Picks. The weather might be changing outside, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks is super simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. On Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose the flex play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Join millions of users to sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app. You guys can take a look here at my Prize Picks projection for Sunday Night Football this weekend between the Steelers and Chargers. I'm taking the more on passing yards for Aaron Rodgers, the more on rushing yards for Jaylen Warren, and the less on passing yards for Justin Herbert. So if you guys want to get in on the action before Sunday's action, you guys can download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Now, there's a lot of people in Steelers Nation that would like this team to add another cornerback, especially because Darius Slay is not playing at a super high level to start this season, to say the least. But I also think that the Steelers, at least for now, are going to stand pat at the cornerback position. Yesterday, in Mike Tomlin's press conference in the south side of Pittsburgh heading into Week 10, he kind of talked about the cornerback room like it's got some good depth. This was a tweet from Nick Farabaugh, who was there yesterday, saying, Tomlin says the Steelers feel comfortable with players like Brandon Echols and James Pierre stepping up at cornerback. Quote, we have more depth at corner than we do at safety. And he was talking about that cornerback room like they actually have pretty darn good depth. And, depending on how you feel about Darius Slay, you could certainly say that that's the case. All right, I thought Slay played his best game of the season versus the Colts, and it was far from perfect. He gave up multiple receptions out in coverage, but I thought, with the quarters-based defense that they deployed this past week in more zone coverage compared to man, I thought that fit his skill set a lot better. And, the results on defense spoke for themselves. But, James Pierre came in, played pretty darn well in the about 20 snaps that he played. Brandon Echols was really good in the slot for this team. And, of course, the Steelers also feel like they can put Jalen Ramsey either at outside corner or at nickel. If there's injuries or if push comes to shove, they still feel like they can put Jalen Ramsey at any of these corner spots. If there's injuries or if Darius Slay really falls off a cliff, they feel like they still have decent depth at the cornerback position. Now, I want to make abundantly clear to the people at home, I would be thrilled to add a cornerback that is better than Darius Slay. I'm just trying to tell you guys that just the tenor and kind of the tone that the Steelers are taking towards this room indicates that they probably won't sign a cornerback, especially the one that is probably the most popular name on Steelers Twitter right now in terms of free agency, which is Asante Samuel Jr. Now, according to a report from Jeremy Fowler earlier this week, Asante is fully healthy. He is cleared to play now, coming off a really nasty back injury, and he is talking with several teams and could take visits this week, and we actually have word that already the Carolina Panthers and the Green Bay Packers are bringing him in for visits this week. not a single whisper from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So just keep that in mind. Personally, I would love to add Asante Samuel Jr., guys. He's inside, outside versatile. He's played in a style of defense that the Steelers are playing right now, at least the style of defense they played against the Colts. I think he'd be a good fit here in Pittsburgh, but it just seems like to me that the Steelers paid a lot of money for Darius Slay, and he played his best game of the season versus the Colts, so they're probably not going to bring in Samuel at this point in time. But then Stephon Gilmore is another guy you can consider as an older kind of dude. He held up pretty nicely in Brian Flores' defense last year, which runs a lot of quarters and palms and stuff like that, a lot of the stuff that we saw the Steelers play versus the Colts this weekend. So something to keep in mind there as a veteran that could be looking to try and win a Super Bowl. Emmanuel Moseley is also a guy that's been a former starter in this league, has played a lot of press man. So if you want to play more press man, he's not the best man corner in the world, to be honest with you. There's a reason why he doesn't have a job, but he's very experienced in that type of defense. Troy Hill has had some experience with a number of different kind of quarters-based teams. So if you're looking for a quarters kind of corner to add some depth to this team, at that position, Troy Hill is somebody you can think about. And then Kendall Fuller is another guy that has really thrived in the past in kind of quarters-based off-zone style defenses, and that seems to be the direction that the Steelers' defense is heading in. So he's somebody that kind of fell off a cliff last year in Miami, if I'm being completely honest with you, but he's been somebody that has been a good player in this league for a while, so somebody to consider there. But if not a cornerback, you might be saying at home, what about safety then? Because in that quote that I just showed you guys about Mike Tomlin, he said that the safety depth isn't all that great. So could that indicate that the Steelers could still bring in a safety in free agency? And I think that it is possible, but it would be more of like a backup safety, because I kind of like the safety setup that the Steelers have right now. I thought that the solution that they had to the safety issue, because plain simply, guys, before last week, Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark just weren't going to get the job done, and the Steelers kind of realized that. So they made a trade and got Kyle Duggar, and then they moved Jalen Ramsey to the other safety spot, and what that has allowed them to do is play kind of this half-and-half kind of quarter-style defense where you can put your safeties in the run fit, and Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar are both excellent tacklers, excellent run defenders, can take on blocks, can do all those different things. So they're almost like hybrid safety linebacker type players in this quarters-based defense that the Steelers are starting to unveil to the world. And then also, Jabril Peppers will be back eventually. You have Derrick Forrest on the roster, who I think is an intriguing talent. So actually right now, I don't think that the Steelers are necessarily looking at safety as a position they need to add in free agency. But if they do want to add one, there are some veteran names out there. Justin Simmons is a very popular name on Steelers Twitter. They brought in Von Bell for a workout last week. They could still consider bringing him in. But some of the other names, Jordan Whitehead, Marcus May, Adrian Amos, these are kind of veteran players that are definitely past their prime. They would be more like Juan Thornhill or Chuck Clark types. So I'm not sure if I'm super interested in any of those names right there. And I think what you need in this defense is guys that can defend the run at a high level. I think Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar do that. So I don't think, the Steelers will be looking at safety help, at least not right now. And the truth is, the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary was good versus the Indianapolis Colts, okay? They did a really good job in this football game. For the most part, there were some lapses in coverage, all those different things. They weren't really great on possession down football, but they did do a good job taking away Daniel Jones's first read a lot more often, which allowed the pass rush to get home. And that pass rush not only led to sacks and pressures and all that stuff, but it led to mistakes from Daniel Jones as well, throwing a couple interceptions. And here's a stat that you guys should know, all right? I've been seeing on Twitter, the Steelers gave up over 300 yards passing in this game. This passing defense still stinks. It's like 149 of those passing yards, guys, came in garbage time in the fourth quarter after the Steelers were already up 17. This Steelers defense only gave up 3.9 yards per play before garbage time last Sunday. And just to put that in perspective, the number one yards per play given up in the league this year is the Denver Broncos with 4.5 yards per play. So the fact that the Steelers for 3.5 quarters, when the game actually was mattering, only gave up 3.9 yards per play to the team that at that point led the league in yards per play in the Indianapolis Colts is extremely impressive, and I do think that the secondary deserves a little bit of credit for holding their own in this ballgame. Now make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you think Pittsburgh's defense has turned a corner, I certainly hope that that's the case. Obviously it's a week-to-week league, and things change and ebb and flow as the season goes on. But I think the Steelers have found something schematically that works for them, and I think they're going to continue to do this until, a team can stop them. And frankly, with the talent that is on this roster, I'm not sure if anyone's going to be able to do that with the amount of pressure that just 4 people can provide for this Steelers defense. So now you might be saying, and speaking of the Steelers defense, what about adding more to this pass rush? Because some people have said, Aquale's out, a Loudermilk's out, a couple of rotational players for you are not in the lineup, so why not go add another defensive tackle? And I think that this is something that they could do, because that second wave of defensive tackles for the Steelers is not fantastic. Y.A. Black has had moments, but he still has issues with pad level and getting blown off his spot. Dean Lowry and Logan Lee are not fantastic backup options, on the interior of the defensive line. Now, what I will say is that I have 3 people listed as starters here, but really the Steelers have been really diving into a 4-man front lately, not the traditional 5-man front in the 3-4 that we have traditionally seen from a Mike Tomlin defense. So really there's only 2 true starters, and Derrick Harmon is more of a rotational guy, and then Y.A. Black comes in as kind of that second wave. So if you look at it from that perspective, the need isn't that, accentuated, but there are some names out there on the defensive tackle market that are intriguing. Christian Wilkins is certainly one that has been thrown out there by some Steelers fans. I'm not even sure if he's healthy. The Raiders wanted him to get another surgery on a really nasty injury that he had last year because it wasn't healing correctly, so I'm not even sure if he's healthy. And then Linval Joseph is kind of an older nose tackle, just sit in the middle of the defense. Not sure if that's the type of guy the Steelers want. Armon Watts is an interesting one because he actually played very well as a rotational defensive tackle for the Steelers just 2 seasons ago. Montravius Adams is another former Steeler that could be implemented into this system again as a backup nose tackle if you want. And then Morgan Fox is kind of an undersized, kind of 3-4 defensive end type that has had success with certain teams throughout his career that you could consider. And then we can shift to the other side of the trenches for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is the offensive line. Now, I actually think when this unit has been completely healthy, they've been really good this year. Especially what I've been really encouraged by is the right side of the Steelers' offensive line this year. Mason McCormick and Troy Fautano are playing really good football. Zach Frazier is continuing to play really good football. Broderick, they're giving him a lot of help. And he's probably the weakest link on the Steelers' offensive line. But when McCormick and Fautano are playing as well as they are, you can do that, and you can get away with that. And Sayamalo, when he's been a really big presence. Of course, when this unit is healthy, Spencer Anderson can play as a jumbo kind of elephant tight end, which has been extremely successful for the Steelers' offense. But Sayamalo currently dealing with a pec injury, and I think a lot of Steelers fans are wondering, could we add some help at left guard to allow Spencer Anderson to still be that jumbo tight end as the season continues? And, these are probably the top guard options that are out there right now. Honestly, among this group, the guy that intrigues me the most is Nate Davis because he played as a starter in Arthur Smith's offense back, when he was with the Tennessee Titans, when they were having all that success with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. Nate Davis was one of the highest graded guards in football when he played in this offense. When he played in Tennessee. Now, obviously, he's older. He's had a string of seasons that has just not been good whatsoever, but it's an intriguing name to maybe keep your eye on if Pittsburgh wants to add an offensive lineman. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comments section. Which NFL free agent would you add to the Steelers roster right now? Personally, I don't think that they're going to do it, but if I could add one NFL free agent right now, it would be Asante Samuel Jr. His inside and outside versatility and his experience playing in quarters-based defenses really appeals to me, and frankly, I would rather bench Darius Slay. I don't think that the Steelers are going to do that, as mentioned before, but if I had to pick one player right now, I would pick Asante Samuel Jr. Let me know your pick down there in the comment section, and that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. We'll have another video for you guys coming out later this evening, so make sure you click that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you know when that video comes out. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.